Greetings, nerds, geeks, and fellow freaks. This is DJ MK, and welcome to another episode of The Lady's Choice. In the last episode, Lady Elizabeth Deverell receives a set of flowers from the Society Swindler. In order to investigate further, she goes to the source of the flowers, only to find that the swindler has returned the pair of silk gloves. In the meantime, she has met with Mr. Amesbury's best friend, and may have possibly instigated a, should I say, romantic liaison of sorts. What will happen next, since this is left in a cliffhanger? Let's find out today with The Lady's Choice. So I purposely left it on a cliffhanger the last episode, so hope you don't hate me for that too much. But anyway, welcome to my next part of The Lady's Choice. So I'm trying something a little bit different today, and I'm using Restream as a method of me reading chat from both YouTube and Twitch. So if anybody is on the app right now, please go ahead and message, because I'm curious to see how it's working out. So without further ado, let us continue our foray with Lady Elizabeth Deverell's decision, as well as her adventure. So let us get started. So she was left in a very interesting position. What will happen next? Let us see now. Would you allow Elizabeth? We should really get the gentlemen be on their way. Oh, come on! Oh, come on! Arabella, why do you have to get in the way of everything? At least you've been married once. She hasn't had a successful debut at all, so... Boy. At the sudden call from Arabella, I take a stumbling step back from Mr. Amesbury, hoping to find my wits again. Arabella, I let you have space with Colonel Foxley. Why could you let me have space with my dude? Come on. Anyway. Oh, of course. I smiled, Mr. Amesbury, struggling to keep the moment from my thoughts. Good night. Good night, Miss Deverell. I truly hope to see you soon. He tips his hat, staring at me for a moment longer, before turning away to walk off with Colonel Foxley down the shadowed street. I watch him go, before noticing Arabella step up beside me. Quite the progressive... I apologize. Quite the progressive thinker, is he not, your Mr. Amesbury? You should not say he's mine, Arabella. People will think you are serious. I believe his intentions towards you are a much bolder declaration than my statement. She smiles at me, though I can see a serious concern in her eyes. He is a wonderful man, and comes from a good family and reputation. Just be careful not to be swept up in his way of thinking yourself. Society isn't quite ready for people with his mindset, and I would hate to think of you gaining the annoyance of society for his sake. You worry too much for me, Arabella. I've known him for so short of a time. Nothing serious has yet come of it. It only takes a moment if it is true, Elizabeth. She takes my hand gently and smiles. Let us get inside. I'm quite chilled at the presence of Colonel Foxley to keep me warm. And you worry about my reputation. Our laughter echoes down the empty street before we turn to head inside. The next morning is the quietest I've spent since arriving in town. Arabella went to town to do her duty and meet some of her extended relations. So... Oh, sorry. I apologize. So, before I continue on with this lovely Regency reading, I just want to say a huge thank you to those who joined my real talk this morning about what Black Panther meant to me. If you're curious about it, it's fully posted on my YouTube channel. So feel free to just go ahead and look up the video. And if you have any questions that I never answered or you're just curious about, please feel free to just put them in the comments below, in chat today, or just anytime you think about it, because I am ready and willing to answer some questions. But yeah, I think I'm going to make this a regular thing, doing these sections, because that was really fun doing that, and I'm not a big channel, so the fact that I had such a rapport with you all, it makes me feel happy, so thank you about that. So, let's continue. Getting back to my Regency accent here. So, I enjoy the quiet of the morning sunshine, sitting on my window seat and reading. At least I attempt to read. Instead, I find my mind wandering to yesterday's vigorous conversations with Mr. Amesbury. It's such a thrill to be able to speak with someone on such topics and be engaged in debate rather than being dismissed. It certainly helps that he is so handsome. I give a happy sigh, not willing to let my thoughts move away from him. The sound at the door jolts me back to reality, and I can hear Arabella's voice echoing from the hall below. Is she in her room? Yes, Lady Ashburn. Bring us tea, would you, Johnson? Of course, Lady Ashburn. And do please stop referring to me as Lady Ashburn. It makes me sound like some crumbling old woman. I'm afraid it is how it must be, Lady Ashburn. I hid my amusement from the overheard conversation and turned to face Arabella as she walks inside. I finally managed to get away from the dull side of the family. Duty is duty, no matter what it entails. It was good of you to do it. She slumps down onto the bed and lets down a dirt. I don't know what it is about my speech today. I've been speaking a lot today, and yet I'm messing up. Then again, a lady always follows through with her agreements. She slumps down onto the bed and lets out a drawn breath. Whew. Yes, well, I am a good sort in general, you know. Someone has to give them a boost of cheer once in a while. At least it is done and over. But I do need someone to brighten my spirits again. Her eyes sparkle with a sudden smile and she leans forward. How about attending the event hall this afternoon? There's quite the gathering to be held there, if I remember. There'd be little point in me refusing, would there, when you have that look about you? How well you know me, Elizabeth. We'll have tea and then set off. She stands from the bed, glancing into the mirror of my desk in order to sort her hair a little. I do hope my cousins won't be there. With a mischievous smile on her lips, she leaves the room. That afternoon, we make our way to the event hall, where it is busy as our Let me start that again. Sorry. That afternoon, we make our way to the event hall, where it is as busy as Arabella predicted. Now, isn't this much better than reading in your room all day? I open my mouth to respond when someone else speaks first. Reading? We both turn to find Mr. Amesbury and Mr. Montfort approaching. I don't know what's going on today. I was speaking so fine this morning, and yet, when it comes to reading, I seem to be slipping up dramatically. Anyway, we both turn to find Mr. Amesbury and Mr. Montfort approaching. I suppose you're wishing to spur your imagination. That was how you so eloquently put it, wasn't it, Miss Deverell? That was how you so eloquently put it, wasn't it, Miss Deverell? Indeed it was, Mr. Amesbury. And yes, the book was most enlightening to my mind. How well it is to find you can remember my words with such clarity. I doubt I could ever forget anything we speak about. He holds my gaze for a few moments longer, and I almost forget there are others stood before us. Lawrence, we have not yet greeted the ladies formally. How right you are, Pierce. Good day to you, ladies. Isn't it late for that? Wow. He gives a somewhat flamboyant bow to the annoyance of his friend. Mr. Montfort sighs heavily and rolls his eyes before giving a sharp bow himself. It is good to see you both here today. We had wondered whether you would be in attendance at all. Yes, we are a little late. I had to meet with some relatives this morning, and the engagement bled into the afternoon. Well, you are here now, and that is the important thing. Would you allow us to escort you into the room? We'd be delighted. I take Mr. Amesbury's offered arm, the feeling of stepping into place beside him almost comforting. Arabella and Mr. Montfort walk a couple places in front. I don't suppose you happened to see Colonel Foxley at the hall today? She throws the question out to both gentlemen, and Mr. Amesbury sides his knowing gaze to me. I give a quiet chuckle in response. I believe I spotted him with some other officers not long ago. He stands much taller than any here, as so he shouldn't be too hard to find. Arabella's whole being lifts at the news, and I notice her steps speed a little into the main part of the room. We pass a couple of hours in very good company, joined later by Miss Witter. She is most captured by Mr. Montfort, who politely deals with her reverence with a surprising amount of practiced ease. At one point, I catch his eye and he throws me a knowing smile as Miss Witter continues chattering endlessly. I cannot help but chuckle quietly in response, though try not to let Arabella see. A while later, the gentlemen offer to find more tea, leaving us alone to talk more openly without their presence. Miss Witter wiggles her chair. Wiggles. Miss Witter's Miss Witter wiggles her chair forwards, the legs streaking slightly on the polished floor. That's a good tongue twister, actually. I do my best not to wince at the sound and attention it brings. My aunt unfortunately knew little of Mr. Montfort, even though his family is so prominent. But she did know a little. It is difficult to feign disinterest, and both Arabella and I lean closer to her as she speaks. He is the heir of a vast fortune and estate, far exceeding that of anyone in town this season, say Sir Walter Huntington. He is apparently very well-mannered, and most welcome wherever he goes. I can attest to his countenance being most pleasant. As can I. I cannot help smiling at the blush that blooms in her pale cheeks. He is the oldest son of 3, with 2 other sisters as well. That is quite the good-sized family. His parents' marriage must be a happy one, at least. It is, from what anyone can gather. Many have not seen Sir and Lady Montfort in society for some time, though. Rumors are abound as to why that should be. Well, knowing me, and I've been a victim of rumors myself, I find it really dreadful that some people have carried around such terrible gossip to ruin somebody else. Rumors? How dreadful! I should hate to be the target of such gossip. Then again, I should know. I was target of many a gossip when I lost my first partner in my last season. I pushed a curl behind my ear, hoping to hide my face from the sudden glares of those surrounding us in my statement. Oh, do not worry on their account, Elizabeth. I should think more on what people talk about you. Maybe on how you and Mr. Amesbury have spent the whole afternoon in each other's company. barely even acknowledging the rest of your party. Arabella? That is not... Colonel Foxley's return stifles her bright laughter. Have we missed a good joke? I do hope not. As soon as he sits, I noticed Arabella tuck her hand around the Colonel's arm, almost from instinct than purpose. I smiled to myself, Arabella teasing me over my attachments, when it is hers that seems so clear. You have missed nothing, Ernest. The two are once again lost to each other, and I hear a loud sigh from Miss Witter as she realizes it too. I suppose I best return to my aunt. She gives a final curtsy of goodbye before scuttling away through the crowd. Mr. Ainsbury and Mr. Montfort take her place. Miss Witter is no longer to join us. That you sound quite so relieved about it, Pierce. I did nothing of the sort. Mr. Amesbury slaps Mr. Montfort on the arm, making him stumble a little. Break out the smile once in a while, man! Hopefully that polite refinement will stick. A gentle laughter settles over the group for a moment, before quiet reigns again. Honestly, I wonder... I know it's been like 2 years since the publisher put up this game, but it would be awesome, like, what if Montfort was an option? Was a romance option. That would be really awesome if he was. Because he seems really cool. But anyway. A gentle laughter settles over the group for a moment before quiet reigns again. Well, I am needed some exercise. I've been sat in one place for far too long. Shall we, Ernest? It would be my true delight. He takes her hand, the two wandering off together about the room and greeting those who have attended. Okay, you two are so obvious! Come on. Get a room full of tea and biscuits or something. Anyway. Mr. Montfort's gaze passes over the people spread about the room in groups. His focus flicks back to us before starting to land on me. I believe your friend has come up with a fine idea. Would you care to... Indeed she has! Mr. Ainsbury... You're overcompensating. Dude. Even though... she's already fallen for you. Mr. Ainsbury stands from his place, his hand outstretched towards me. May I, Miss Deverell? I slip my hand into his fingers warm and gentle as they wrap around mine. Of course, Mr. Amesbury. He curls my hand around his arm, the motion now so familiar. We turn to face Mr. Montfort, who is looking a lot stiffer than he had just a moment before. You coming, Pierce? We can bore Miss Deverell with tales of our youth once again. Such tales would never bore me, I can assure you. Yeah, I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna rewind a little. Oop. And do a save spot. Such tales would never bore me, I can assure you. Mr. Ainsbury's attention shifts from his friend to me, a genuine smile lighting his face and making his brown eyes sparkle. I think I shall only be intruding should I join. Don't be a... If you will excuse me, I do need to return home anyway. I must write to my family, unless they fear that I did not arrive in town safely. He gives a quick bow and suddenly strolls away with a wicked protest. Pierce! But Mr. Ainsbury's call does not stop the man as he disappears towards the exit. How odd. Is everything alright? Mr. Ainsbury smiles at me, his worry replaced by cheer. I expect so. It's true that Pierce is close to his family. It's not unusual for him to bow out events early in a wish to write them with news. But enough on him. Let us walk about the room. Enough on him, dude! Oblivious. Both of you are oblivious. My goodness. Even I would have known something was up. I would have been like, nope, hold up. Something's up. We gotta fix this right now. I ain't going with you until you fix something. Nope. Anyway, And so we begin circling the large hall, smiling at those who greet us. After a little while, I hear him give a small sigh. You're bored with walking away already. It is not the walking, it's the crowds. He leans closer, his voice hushed, and I roll my lips at his easy intimacy in such an open setting. I feel so constrained in such public venues. If only we had a chance to speak alone, Miss Deverell. Everything is so rigid when amongst people. I wish to speak to you as though in the comfort of our own home. I am unsure how to respond to such a statement. My apologies, Miss Deverell. I realize now how scandalous it must have sounded. The meeting was much more innocent than you may now think. I'm sure it was, Mr. Amesbury. Yet, I'm pleased he cannot hear how fast my heart beats in my chest. His gaze holds mine for the longest moment, until we almost collide with the couple in front of us. He gives a light laugh and return to our task, enjoying the quiet company of each other. A while later, Mr. Amesbury excuses himself to check on Mr. Montfort, his obvious worry not truly settled for his friend. Dang right you check on him! Come on! Thank you! It is your duty as a friend to check on a friend when he is feeling down. By the way, I'm drinking my Sprite. Hashtag not sponsored. And, with the Colonel leaving us also, it's only Arabella and I left at the end of the evening to walk alone. To walk home. It feels as if I barely had the chance to speak with you this afternoon, Elizabeth. It is quite alright. I had good company. As I could see. Mr. Amesbury was very attentive. As was the Colonel to you, I noted. Yes, well, he is a true gentleman. My chuckle echoes down the empty street, the happy sound striking against the consuming darkness. I do believe we have been most blessed this season with our company. And with what great happiness it brings you to see you smiling so much, Elizabeth. Mr. Amesbury may be far more liberal in his thoughts than I would like, but his affections seem truly genuine. He's certainly unlike any man I've ever met before. And that is probably why he has caught your fancy so thoroughly. You can hardly find a man of such intellect and interest in the subdued houses of the country. I doubt there's a man in the country who's worthy such a kind woman as you, Elizabeth. I'm pleased that Amesbury does not take advantage of your gentleness. I pull her closer and we smile at each other, my appreciation for her having forced me into the season this year clear on my face. She's kind enough not to say anything in response. What is that? Of course, I knew it. Good evening, ladies. The society swindler gives an exaggerated bow, tipping his hat to us as he stands to look at us once again. You've already taken us from us once. What could you possibly hope to steal now? He barely acknowledges Arabella's angry retort, his gaze glancing through the shadow to find mine. He shuffles a step closer, so as Arabella is forced to move aside. I swallow hard, once again wishing that it was from fear rather than excitement. That is quite the hat, my lady. You can have it, if it means you'll leave us be. That is my usual deal. Unless you wish to make another. I shall take that pout as a no. He gives a chuckle, and I frown at the familiar sound of it. But I barely get a chance to hear it over the rush of blood through my body. I reached towards my hat, only to find the swindler stepping closer. Do not trouble yourself. He slips the gun into his belt, the metal gleaming in the light of the oil lamp. Now then. His hands move toward me, and I instinctively flinch away. He withdraws a little at my motion. You need not fear me. I flicker my gaze up to meet his, though he's too heavily shadowed to make out fully. There is truth in his words, a strange seriousness that hangs on his tone. I will never hurt you. I frown for a moment before giving a small nod on my head without even meaning to. He moves his hands back towards me and I try not to gasp as he touches the bare skin of my neck. Okay! I feel like I made the wrong decision about this guy. Come on. How could you not figure it out already? His fingers slowly trace over my skin, leaving a trail of warmth as they move. I do utmost to ignore the reaction his touch evokes from me, and instead keep my expression as steady as I possibly can. He then pulls the hat pin from the bottom of the hat, and I feel his gaze upon me as though it were the heat of the midday sun. In silence, he pulls the other pin from the top and the hat flutters from my head. He catches it with ease. The brim of his large hat glances over my hair as he leans towards my ear. You are most obliging, my lady. Indeed, you are my most favorite of patrons. Patron? Oops. Whoa, whoops. Come back. What else would you prefer I call you? I cannot see his eyes behind this hat, but I can hear the teasing in his voice. I press my lips into a tight line before I say something I might regret. Think on an answer, won't you? I'm most certain we'll meet again. He takes a wide step back, and I take a deep breath. Enjoy the rest of your evening. He waves a goodbye with my own hat, before disappearing down an alleyway lost in the shadows. Elizabeth! Arabella brushes back to my side, and I'm ashamed to realize I forgot she had been stood nearby. He did not hurt you! She asks the question, but I could hear there's less worry in her voice than the last time this happened. I am unharmed. I tell you, Elizabeth, I do not care for the way he seems to have singled you out. I will have to tell Ernest of this. We shouldn't worry. Come now. Let's get you home into the safety of bed. The excitement and nerves in the moment before drain away at the mere mention of sleep, and I give a tired nod. She takes my arm and we wander down the street, my thoughts lingering once again on the masked stranger. Sleep finds me quickly that night, though my dreams are a whirlwind of masks and shadows. I'm thankful Arabella has cancelled our plans the next day, because it would be too much for me to bear after the night before. Are you sure I could not tempt you to more tea, Elizabeth? I shake my head as well as she comes towards me, bearing a teapot like a cure-all potion. She's barely let me be all morning. Arabella, I take the teapot from her and place it on the table before pulling her gently down to sit beside me. You've barely taken any rest yourself. Please sit down. Johnson instantly shuffles in to take away the tea things, seeming a little comfier at no longer having his duties overtaken by Arabella. You're kind to think of me when it is you who must be so overcome by what happened. I just want any uneasiness over last night to be settled. You need not worry about such a thing. I'm not affected. I shiver at the memory of the swindler's fingers against the sensitive skin on my neck, but quickly shake it away. I know that, and I admit I do not think he wishes violence against you. But I'm still concerned over his favoring you in such a way. I cannot believe it is a good thing to catch an eye of any man such as he. I promise you, it was not my intent to do so. I know, but it still seems to have happened. You're more than even my family could be to me, Elizabeth. I just wish for you to be safe and happy. Her brow creases in seriousness, and I can't help but be warmed by her heartfelt sentiment. I place my hands on hers and smile, hoping to relieve some of her tension. Oh, enough of that. Come, let us eat. She reaches for the breakfast tray, only to frown as her gaze passes over the newspaper. An article in the Society Swindler is featured on the main page. Oh, I should have hidden this. I apologize. There's no need. I have a good friend who works at this paper. I should contact him and tell him to stop writing such gossip-laden stories. Before I can respond, a knock sounds at the door. Oops. Ooh, I trembled. They both wait a moment until Johnson walks in, a familiar cape and hat in his grasp. Come on. There we go. Come on. Colonel Foxley to see you. The visitor is well received as I hear Arabella give a light, excited gasp beside me at the announcement. She just has time to press her curls a little tighter with her fingers before the colonel strides inside. Good morning, Arabella. Miss Deverell. Good morning, Colonel, and I hope you will call me Elizabeth. Well, that would be a great honor, one I hope you will return. I notice Arabella's smile brighten at the conversation, and she quickly stands and moves towards him. What brings you here today, Ernest? His cheer quickly fades, and he steps closer, his hands outstretched to take hers. I had heard. I try to glance away from the intimate touch, but he seems to remember I am there and snaps his hands back from Arabella. I had heard that rumor that you had yet another encounter with the swindler. My word! News truly does spread fast in this town. Then it's true. It is. She turns to look at me, her concern once again returning. You took Elizabeth's hat. I should have been there. My duty is to protect... I hold up a hand to quiet his spoken concerns. Please, do not worry yourself. You couldn't have known what would happen. But still, I should have. As you can see, I'm quite well. No harm done. Still, I shall not be so remiss again. He turns to Arabella and knows his hands clenched behind his back to keep them in place. To the best of my capability, I vow to keep you safe. I shall attend the functions you do and escort you back from all of them. I will not let any misfortune fall upon you ever again. Dude! Dang, this man's a boss. So, let me go check my YouTube. Okay. So, looks like no messages yet, but hey. I got it all set to go, in case anybody wants to talk. But man! That is a good guy. The fact that he's willing to protect me as well as his lady love. His words towards Arabella are so heartfelt, so full of promised emotion, that I feel a pang in my chest. The two stare at each other, silence heavy, the air laced with unspoken words between them. As quietly as I can, I tiptoe from the room, though neither pay me much mind. I close the door behind me and head into the foyer, where I come upon Johnson laying a small box on the table. I knew it. Who is that for, Johnson? The man glances at me, one bushy brow arched. It is for you, Miss Deverell. Curiosity forces my feet forwards, and I found the small pink box, its sides held together by a fine lace ribbon. Thank you, Johnson. He gives a bow of his head and shuffles away. When he's disappeared around the corner, I gingerly pull at the bow, which unravels. The box sides fall open, and I stare at the sugar-dusted sweets inside, each contained in their own yellow paper case. Oh! Though I'm surprised by the contents, I'm not so shocked. Oops. Though I'm surprised by the contents, I'm not so shocked to see a note. People call me a thief, but I wonder if it is not you who has become so. You steal all my attentions, Miss Deverell, and I find I'm more than pleased to have them taken by you. even if my other patrons may feel a little left behind. Yours eagerly, the Society Swindler. He knows of my name. Once again, his note finds me awash in a torrent of uncertain emotions. I shake my head and try to clear it, then glance at the box. There's an emblem on the top, one I recognize from the same street as the florist's. Glancing back towards the drawing room, it seems Arabella and the Colonel are not missing my company. So, I tug on my cape and leave the house to make my way towards the center of town. The confectionery shop with the same emblem is a few doors away from the florist, and I head inside. The young man greets me and answers my questions about the parcel without hesitation. Once again, he has no certain details on who bought the package, but he was asked to give him a parcel should I come asking for it. I take the large circular box from the man and give my thanks for heading out into the street. And of course, we know what it is. It's her hat again. Scurrying to a shadow at the edge of the street, I eagerly tear away the weird holding the lid onto the box. I suppose I shouldn't be too shocked to find my hat let inside, the article kept pristine with the silk lining of the container. Another note lays atop of it, the same words emblazoned on the cream card that had been on my gloves. Curious minds should always be rewarded. Yours eagerly, the Society Swindler. Should I tell Arabella? No, she would just worry herself into hysterics. Or excite herself into them. I shake my head at the thought and slip the card back into the box. Just as I make the step back out into the street, I almost bump into someone. I guess Amesbury again. Oh, excuse me. Gosh, you're so predictable, dude. How are you not putting 2 and 2 together, Elizabeth? I'm smarter than you. Then again, I'm a third person in this party, so of course I'm gonna observe it much more quickly compared to you, who is so gaga in the love clouds that of course you're not gonna see the thing that's right in front of you. And this is why I get frustrated with romance stories sometimes. No, it's my fault. Mr. Amesbury? Miss Deverell, what a delightful surprise. He tips his hat to me, a glimmer in his eyes as the smile widens. How strange to happen upon you here once again. Indeed, though, I find it even more odd to have you seemingly have purchased a hat from the confectioner's. His gaze passes to the shop behind me, then to the package I hold. How intuitive of you to know it is a hat in the box when it could possibly be a cake. That was a dead giveaway. Come on. Elizabeth, get your head in the game. For once I seem to have caught him on guard, and I tilt my head a little as he stumbles to reply. My servants purchased some lovely goods from that confectioner's, and I simply know they do not sell cakes in that kind of packaging. I examine him for a moment longer, unsure what to make of his sudden uncertainty. He quickly speaks to break the quiet. I was actually just on my way to call on you, in fact, so it's very lucky that I have come upon you here. Shall we? That would be so lovely. I take his offered arm and fall into the familiar place beside him, my previous thoughts washed away by his closeness. Only to end in tragedy. We pass through the park, sticking to the quieter areas. I have been thinking more about the gathering I promised Lady Ashburn I would host in a few weeks. Is the planning progressing well? No, in fact, it seems I have little ability in planning such things. That's the purpose of my calling upon you today. Oh? I hope to enlist you as an advisor of sorts, to help me put it all together. I'm sure your staff are more than capable, but they are not you. I swallow hard at his heavy words, his gaze turning soft. Nothing would make me happier. And I truly wish really more than to make you happy, Miss Deverell. You tease me again. I assure you, I do not tease in this. I hold his gaze for a moment longer, unsure what to say, or even if I could speak under his close attention. He clears his throat to break the heated moment, and we stare back at the path. Then I shall call on you tomorrow morning, and we can begin preparations at my house. Alone? Far from it, unfortunately. My father has given me the service of a chaperone. I'm sure Mrs. Peaks would be overjoyed to put some use, rather than having to listen to more of Pierce's exultations over society's company. I give a laugh and he pulls me a little closer, his hand finding mine tucked into his arm. I'm now most looking forward to the coming weeks. I'm starting to regret this. Oh boy. But it would be fun to have the party before the inevitable happens. Anyway, the next day Mr. Amesbury arrives promptly with the carriage in tow, and we head straight to his house. It is a grand place, with rich furnishings and open rooms. He spends most of the first day acquainting me with the staff and with the house, and I'm far too nervous to do much else than look about. The few days after that, I continue to try and make myself at home in his grand lodgings, still a little uneasy at having the run of someone else's house. Mr. Montfort is also helpful in making me feel welcomed, though I found myself drawn to Mr. Amesbury's company whenever possible. It isn't until the end of next week that I feel confident enough that in the house to begin helping prepare properly. I feel we should acquire some better lighting. I glance at the candle-lit chandelier, which is beautifully draped in sparkling crystals, but it provides little light. It is bright enough with sunlight, but your guests may find it more difficult as the evening falls. I turn to Mr. Amesbury, only to find him gazing at me with a smile. Mr. Amesbury, you do not seem to be focused on the task at hand. It is impossible to do so when you're much more distracting than anything else. Mrs. Peaks would not favor such talk between us alone. And I am most grateful she is not here. But I apologize, I asked you here to help, and you are doing so most efficiently. I shall note down. Better lighting. Would your family be pleased to know you holding such an event? Most certainly. Though I wonder if my father would not keel over from shock. That I would make an effort in society at all would give him false hope that I might try harder in the future. And what of you? Helping with this will surely gain some favor amongst our peers. I confess I would know little how to use any favor given. As you may have noticed, I'm not the most well versed in knowing society's expectations. And you're in very good company. I'm not sure Arabella would be pleased to hear such a thing. Obviously, your friend's opinion ranks higher than the society's. Of course. Good. Footsteps down by the door, and Amesbury glances towards it. Indeed, it is our friends that help us make us the people we are. And I wouldn't be quite so boring if it weren't for Pierce's most studious tutoring. At that moment, Mr. Montfort walks through the door, a book partly open in one of his hands. If only you were half as humorous as you think you are, Lawrence, you may be doubled over in laughter. Mr. Amesbury chuckles and puts Mr. Montfort further into the room. Oh, come now. You have most hilarious and private company. I am loath to agree to such, but you are quite right. I'd best get this list to the staff. I'll only be a few moments. He throws a lingering smile in my direction before disappearing out the door. It's been many years since I've seen him so bright. It must be your influence, Miss Deverell. Well, I'm sure he's simply excited for the upcoming gathering. I find it highly unlikely, due to Lawrence's continual shunning of any kind of public gathering. Whatever the reason, I'm glad to see him sorry, wrong voice. Whatever the reason, I'm glad to see him so happy. Your presence in the house over the weeks has certainly helped brighten the atmosphere. I do not believe I could take credit for such a thing, but thank you. I move to turn away, wanting to return to begin preparations when I feel him reach for me. When I turn back to face him, I'm shocked to find him so close. You are too modest, Miss Deverell. I cannot believe your cluelessness to the effect you cast upon those around you. It is quite magnetizing. I was thinking of what was going for him too! Mr. Montfort! I stepped back, but we followed my motion seemingly without realizing it. We talked weeks ago of Lawrence's attachment to you. You did not reply to my question then. Do you have an answer for it now? I would implore you that if you should have any doubts, even small ones, that you would not lead him astray. You must be true to yourself when it comes to matters of the heart. Even if it may not be what the other person wishes, it is better to be honest in these things. He's not wrong. Freeing each other now may allow you, both of you, to find those who may be truer to what you seek. He stares at me for a moment before blinking a couple of times. With apparently just as much confusion as I feel, he lets his hand drop on my arm and takes 2 wide strides back. My apologies, Miss Deverell. He straightens himself, his hands wrapped behind his back. As I find myself... Oh, God! Wow, Mr. Montfort. Just... wow. If you did not do that one motion, I actually considered you to be somebody better than Amesbury. But with that, you just knocked yourself so many pegs down. Wow. The sound of the door makes us both flinch, the strange tension that had filled the room thankfully disappearing at Mr. Amesbury's return. Sorry for taking so long. I was accosted by Mr. Peakes, who was actually hoping to get your opinion on something, Pierce. Of course, I would never like to keep a lady waiting. Mr. Montfort's gaze shifts in my direction once more, holding it for a moment, before he bows and leaves the room. I take an uncertain breath as soon as he's gone. Thankfully, it is once again just Mr. Amesbury and I. Is everything alright? I've only been gone a moment and it seems like the air has grown dreadfully heavy. I glance at Mr. Amesbury, his brown eyes sparkling in the sunlight bursting through the windows. You know, for the sake of preserving Mr. Montfort's dignity at bare minimum, considering that he's a higher station, let's return to preparations, not talk about it. I had a short breath, thinking it's better seeing anything. I'm simply happy to return to preparations with you. I'm glad to hear that. It's just... I wouldn't want you and Pierce to be getting off on the wrong foot. He is, after all, my closest friend, and you are... He cut his words short, and I catch my breath in the anticipation of what he was going to say. Yes? You must know what I mean to say. How can I when you did not finish? My skin prickles with excitement as he steps closer. Is he going to say it? Is he going to say it? Let's find out. His warm breath washes over me as he leans close, his gaze flickering between my eyes and my lips. Miss Deverell. I can barely hear him over the thudding of my heart. He leans further towards me, his body achingly close to mine, his arms moving to wrap about me. I believe you'll be needing this. Are you? I should have seen that coming. I should have seen that coming. Come on! Oh my gosh! Ah! Why? I glanced out to see that he had simply reached behind me to retrieve the book I'd been using for reference. Shall we return to preparations? You little snake! You... Ah! He throws me a teasing smirk before turning back to face the room. I shake my head and smile, trying to still the racing of my heart. Over the next few weeks, Mr. Amesbury and I spend nearly every day in each other's company. Good thing I have a drink right now. Otherwise, I don't know how I'll be able to get through this. Over the next few weeks, Mr. Amesbury and I spend nearly every day in each other's company. Mr. Montfort helps wherever he can, though I'm thankful that there is not a repeat of whatever he had been trying to say before. Instead, he is polite and cheerful, helping whenever possible. But it is the long stretches of time alone with Mr. Amesbury that I relish. Planning this event is certainly no chore, though it takes longer than expected due to our continual conversations. Finally, it's the day of the gathering, and I have arranged to meet Arabella and Ernest in the afternoon before heading to Amesbury's for any final preparations. Oh, Elizabeth! You made it! Of course. You thought I would not. You've been rather busy helping Mr. Amesbury. The suggestive tone to her voice makes my cheeks flush pink, and I glance away. I have merely been aiding with the gathering you longed for. And I am indeed most looking forward to it later this evening. Her hand falls on Ernest's, who I do notice does not draw away from the touch, even in the public setting. It is quite the talk amongst everyone. I hope you have prepared for so many curious people. I hope so as well. Bright laughter envelops us, and we settle down to enjoy our tea. Oh, do excuse me, ladies. He sees my fellow officers have arrived. He stands from his place and gives a well-practiced bow, before striding off to meet up with the uniformed men who had just walked in. Arabella shifts her chair a little closer, her touch transferring to me as she now takes my hands. Well, now that we are alone, you must tell me everything. I don't know what you could mean. Oh, Elizabeth, you cannot fool me with such innocence. I've barely seen you these past weeks, and when I have, you have spoken of little but your Mr. Amesbury. Preparations for tonight's event has taken more time than originally thought. That is all. Oh, that is all, truly. That is all. I try to answer as calmly as possible, but her tone tugs a smile from me. You know, it's not a bad thing to be so happy. Even if it is due to someone who's rather more bold than I would like. When you find someone who enriches your life, do not let them go. I notice her gaze slide past me, her focus now trained on Ernest. The man smiles brightly at her attention, and the two seem lost to each other for a moment. She shakes her head slightly back to break her gazing. Plus, I do believe Mr. Amesbury must be your good luck charm. Oh? How so? You have not had one woman or scandalous letter from the society swindler since you began helping Mr. Amesbury. She sounds almost disappointed, but I realize she is right. That's true. I had almost completely forgotten about him. It's been so long. It has. No one has heard a peep from the bandit in a long while. Maybe he grew tired of the scheme. Or maybe you could see how fond you have grown to someone else, and simply realize his attentions will not work. No matter how many flowers or sweets he sends. But enough of strangers. Are you seeing Mr. Amesbury today? Yes, I am to head there soon, in fact. Well, it has been some time since I've spoken to Mr. Amesbury. Maybe Ernest and I could collect you later and we'll walk home together? A wonderful idea, Arabella. And with that decided, I give her a hug, say my goodbyes to Ernest, and head to the Crescent and Mr. Amesbury's residence. Arriving at the house, I find Mr. Amesbury waiting in the foyer for me. Miss Deverell, how good to see you. I was beginning to worry you had forgotten our appointment. He steps forward in front of the servant who moves to take my coat and hat. Instead, he reaches forward to help me out of the cape himself. I do my best to ignore his close proximity, though it is growing more difficult each day I am with him. I will never forget such a thing, Mr. Amesbury. I turn only to find he has not moved away, our bodies close to touching. I am glad to hear such. I barely hear his response, instead captured by his intense gaze. Okay, breaking out my accent for a little bit. Okay! How come he hasn't at this point figured out that the society swindler and this dude are the exact same person? Come on. Come on. You've had 2 encounters with the dude. And even the statements. And even you had his own name. And also each time you get something from the swindler, he comes out after you. So how is that gonna, how did you put 2 and 2 together? Kind of peeved. Like, he has been, what, they've been together for like, what, a month? 2? Just can't believe he's gonna end up with this guy. There better be like an arc or something where they just break up for a little bit of time and then they get back together until he realizes his mistake. Otherwise, I do not approve. Anyway. I barely hear his response, instead captured by his intense gaze. Footsteps sound from beside us, and I stumble a step back to Mr. Amesbury. Mr. Montfort walks into the foyer from the drawing room, a smile brightening his face as he sees me. Miss Deverell, what a delight to see you again. He gives a small bow, and I curtsy in return. Good day to you too, Mr. Montfort. You're just in time, Pierce. Oh? He doesn't sound so enthused as Mr. Amesbury pulls him closer. I have a few last chores to do, so would you mind escorting Miss Deverell about the rooms for a final check? I try not to let disappointment show on my face, hoping to have had Mr. Amesbury's company for the entire time as usual. It would be my true pleasure. Excellent. He takes a step closer to me, taking one of my hands in his. I shan't be too long, and then you shall have all of me, Miss Deverell. Of course, I understand. He steps back, moving my hand from his to Mr. Montfort's, wraps his fingers around mine. I'm hoping you find everything just the way you hoped. He gives a half bow before marching from the room with a servant in tow. Shall we continue on, Miss Deverell? Yes, thank you. He leads me away from the foyer, but I can't help but glance back to where Mr. Amesbury had gone. A couple hours later, As evening is drawing in and it's the only time for me to leave and prepare myself for the evening's gathering, Mr. Ainsbury returns. Hi! How are we doing? Good, how about you? Fine. My aunt says hi, by the way. My apologies for being so long, Miss Deverell. The wine does look better, I will admit. None needed, Mr. Ainsbury. I understand last minute preparations are needed. I thought Pierce would be keeping you company. Mr. Montfort has only just left to ready himself for tonight. Arabella will be here to soon escort me home also. Then I shall make the most of the time we have together. I can do little more than smile at him as he closes the gap between us. I feared I might speak I reveal the depth of my feelings have grown for him over the weeks. You are truly beautiful, Miss Deverell, and your mind is just as much so. Let me save it for a second. Oh! I stumbled back a little at the memory of the swindler's words, so similar to Mr. Ainsbury's flashes into my mind. Now you figured it out! Now you figure it out! My gosh! But anyway. Are you alright? Are you ill? No, I'm quite fine, thank you. I turned away slightly, feeling suddenly a little uncertain. For a moment, it seemed as though Mr. Amesbury could be... No! That's ridiculous! I shake away the silly thought, my gaze flickering upwards towards the chandelier. It seems that better lighting was forgotten. I gesture to the light. A couple of the candles burned down completely. Ah, I see. You are quite right. If you retrieve one of the other candles for your servants, I'm sure they will have time enough to buy some matching ones for tonight. An excellent idea. Though I did give the staff a couple hours for themselves before the event. That was most generous of you. Yes, but it would seem it was a little remiss of me not to think ahead. I now have no one to retrieve the candle. Mr. Ainsbury, we are hardly incapable of completing such a task ourselves. Before he could speak further, I step up to the sofa and balance against the arm, reaching up to retrieve the candle. It is thankfully a low-hanging chandelier, and I'm practiced enough from this endeavor with many of the staff at the family estate being too old for such things. Miss Deverell! It seems for once I am the one to shock you, Mr. Ainsbury. With steady steps, I move up the sofa and back to the floor, only to feel a pair of hands wrap around me. You continue to surprise me daily, Miss Deverell. But please do not risk yourself on my behalf again. It was hardly a risk, just a candle. He laughed softly, and I could feel the vibrations of it through his chest nearly pressed against mine. What would it be like to live with you every day? I wonder. Is it something you think of? Oh, Miss Deverell, you cannot fathom as to how many hours I spent thinking of just such a life. My heart drums in my chest, blood coursing through my body so fast my mind whirls. Anyway. I catch my breath as his gaze flickers to my lips, a jolt of excited anticipation striking through me. He gently pulls me closer, his head bowing down to mine. Ah! Dang it, first Arabella, then the reference guide, and now Montfort. Goodness, Regency era would be so tense, and yet on the other hand so interesting. You should not hold Miss Deverell in such an intimate way, Lawrence. Especially with no chaperone in the room. Mr. Ainsbury's grasp loosens and I take an easy step back, my mind still spinning from our heated moment. A frown settles on Mr. Montfort's brow, but he turns away, seemingly to hide it. If I do not take the opportunity, when should I ever be able to speak to her alone? He winks at me, and I barely manage to stifle a chuckle. Mr. Montfort gives a heavy sigh, turning to look for a book in one of the bookshelves lining the walls. Maybe you should take a mask of that swindler fellow. Then you could do as you wish. Maybe I should. His focus on me is broken as a knock sounds from the front door. Arabella's familiar voice echoes from the hallway, and I realize it must be later than I thought. Arabella sweeps into the room, a smile on her face. Mr. Ainsbury! Mr. Montfort! How good to see you both again! Bows and curtsies are exchanged, Mr. Montfort moving to a further corner in the room. I am most anxious for tonight's gathering. Oh, I do believe it would be quite something. Wholly due to Miss Deverell's diligent advice and care and preparations. You give me far too much credit, Mr. Ainsbury. I do not believe so. Well, unless we make haste home to prepare, then we will not be able to enjoy the efforts put into the gathering. No matter who did the most towards it. Oh, of course, you're quite right. Arabella and Ernest move back into the hallway, and a servant steps towards me and offers my cape and hat. But as I reach to take my cape, Mr. Ainsbury catches it first. May I? I give a weak nod, turning so he can drape the garment over me. It takes all my focus to turn to face him as his breath washes over my shoulder. I'm suddenly jolted from my reverie as his fingers graze over the skin of my neck in a familiar motion. Without thinking, I step away and spin on my heel to face Mr. Ainsbury, who looks shocked as I must. Something wrong? I listen intently to his voice, frowning deeply as my mind whirls with familiarity. Surely, he can't be. I've been saying this since episode 1, Elizabeth. Yes, he is! Don't deny your instincts. Miss Deverell. He steps closer to me again, and my thoughts are almost wiped away at his nearness. I wish I could end it here. I wish I could end it here, but I just want to get this plot over with. Okay. I'll finish this path, but the next one I'm definitely changing to somebody else. I shake my head and smile as best I can. Nothing is wrong at all. I apologize, I would not like you walk home if you were unwell. I will call for my carriage, it would be but moments. Genuine concern tugs at his voice, but still I'm beginning to recognize the sound of it. The society swindler sounds so much the same. No, even to think such a thing is ridiculous. Mr. Ainsbury cannot be the swindler. I stare up at him, his eyes wide with worry as he gazes at me. I place my hand on his arm to still his concerns. You do not need to worry over me. I may not need to, but I shall anyway. I only wish to see you well. That is kind, but as you can see, I am perfectly fine. Indeed you are. I look forward to seeing you soon, Miss Deverell. Very soon indeed. The gathering is merely hours away. Maybe even sooner than that. I frown at the apparent hidden meaning into his words, only to be called away by Arabella, who was keen to leave. True to his word, Ernest escorts Arabella and I home, though none of us seem overly concerned with our surroundings. Instead, our enthusiastic chatter has remained on the upcoming event that evening. The officers are beyond excited to attend such a private gathering. It seems to be the talk of the town. I'm not sure Mr. Ainsbury would care to know he has delighted society so much. Yes, he certainly delighted some of us most heartily. From what I've heard, it would seem few people have gained a peek inside the Ainsbury residence. Even fewer have met the heir to the Ainsbury name himself. A sudden flurry of shadow makes us halt in our steps. Really, you had the gall to do this when they're about to go for your... Goodness. You and Elizabeth are meant for each other, then. You are not smart for the fact that you're doing it when they're on their way to your event. And she's not smart because it took her only now to figure out that you can put two and two together. I hear Arabella gasp loudly as she stumbles aside, a dark figure stepping between us. Good evening, ladies. Colonel Foxley. How dare you address me, sir? You prefer that I ignored you? The man stroking on the mix Ernest clenches fists in anger. He simply shrugs off the curls, fuming, and turns to face me. And for the first time, I truly look closely at him. I hate to give it in to such thought, but since my time with Mr. Amesbury earlier, I just cannot help but wonder. We meet once again, my lady. You presume much to think you can harass these ladies so frequently without consequence. The swindler glances over his shoulder at Ernest, blocking my attempts to see through the shadow to his face. Harass? I would never do such a thing. I'm really eager to know they are safe on the streets. But that safety comes at a price, does it not? He returns his focus to me, and once again I attempt to see through the dark shadow of his hat in the night. You're most correct. My time is precious, and I do require payment for it. And as I've said, you are my favorite patron. Foxy makes a step forward, obviously not liking being blocked by me by the swindler. But I glance at him and shake my head. I'm surprised when he stays in place, apparently understanding my request. I just need to get close enough. A mask cannot hide everything, especially as I have grown to know Mr. Amesbury so well over these weeks. If it is even him at all. I take a step towards him, noticing his smile falter a little as I do. What would you steal from me this time, sir? Even in the shadow, I could see his full lips quirk into a long smile. I am most pleased you asked, my lady. He steps closer, and I take a deep breath to keep my resolve. I would have a kiss. Oh my gosh. Game over. I'm calling it now. Game over. She figures out it's swindler, that that's totally in shock about the progression, agrees with Arabella that this is not a thing anymore, and goes back to the country by herself. And not bother with season ever again. The end. Okay, no, I'm not that cruel. I'm gonna continue on. See if she figures it out herself. How dare you! You disgust. As the crowd stumbles in his insults and what seems both anger and embarrassment, I try to stem my shock. Arabella does not struggle with a retort. Elizabeth, I will not have you pawed over by that brute. The swindler seems to be paying attention to the others, and I find myself hardly hearing them either as he gazes down intently at me. I realized then that this is the perfect moment to find out the truth once and for all. I suppose Arabella and Ernest are still seething behind the swindler. It is alright, Arabella. I'll be fine. Elizabeth! I give her an encouraging nod, and she gives one in return. Here we go. Can we just have something cool where she knocks off the hat or takes off the mask or something? Anything cool like that would be like, ah! She then turns to Ernest and pulls him a little away, obviously hoping to calm him down before he does something reckless. You are kind to your friends. That surprises you. Not in the slightest. Now then, if you don't mind, I would ask for my payment. I swallow hard, the thundering from my heart due once again to the excitement he always manages to pull from me. Looking down, I yank off one of my gloves and offer my hand forwards for him to paste the kiss upon. A deep chuckle echoes from him. He takes my fingers gently in his grasp. Oh, my lady. I gasp as he yanks me forward, almost crashing into his chest. I asked for a kiss. not a formality. He holds me against him firmly, but loose enough to realize I could leave if I wished. The oil lamp beside us, now finally being so close I could see his face partly illuminated. My eyes widen in its true recognition of the warm brown eyes that stare back at me. Mr. Amesbury is a society swindler. No, duh! Just like Yasu is the culprit! I wonder, how will she react next? Oops. Sorry about that. But yeah, I'm gonna be cruel. I'm gonna leave it here. But man, it's only now she realized it after 3 episodes of this? Really? I realized it within the first one. Then again, well, Sprite's on a budget, am I right? So, of course, we recognize right away where she wouldn't. So, anyway. Up next will be Vainglory 5v5 edition. So, keep your eyes out for that. Also, I'm planning to do a review with my friend for Black Panther. Both spoiler and spoiler free. So, those who have not seen the movie, it shall be okay. And for those who have seen the movie, let us have fun together. But anyway, thank you so much for watching this episode. Thank you so much for the Q&A that we had and discussion we had earlier. There'll be another one coming up. And here's all of my socials in case you want to get to know me further. And I also have a coffee page. It only takes $3. If you only want to donate $3, it's totally fine. Any amount helps. The proceeds will go towards my audio stream, because it's something I really want to restart as soon as possible. So, anyway, thank you so much, my beautiful people, for watching this installment of The Lady's Choice, and I will see you in the next video. Blessings, everybody. And, 新年快乐，恭喜发财. Happy Lunar New Year of the Dog. Bye, everybody.